Hello, everybody, and welcome to a quick message before we get into this episode. Sophia had forgotten to tell us until after we stopped recording that 2 weeks from now is her qualifying exams for her PhD. So if you're not aware, that's basically like the entrance exam to the second half of your PhD. That's when you technically go from being a PhD student to a PhD candidate. So it's sort of like PhD midterms, basically. But instead of being like halfway through the semester or the year, it's halfway through the whole degree. So very, very big, very important exams. And those are in 2 weeks for her. So when our next episode, our final episode, would be going out normally. So we have kindly deigned to push that episode until the following week. So instead of coming out on the 29th, like it would normally, it's going to come out on this May 6th. So that'll be good for us because Mike and I will have just seen each other that weekend before at a wedding. So yeah, we talk about seeing you in 2 weeks, I think at the beginning and end of this episode. But then Fia remembered, like, as we were ending the call, that was not true. So see you in 3 weeks after this episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 179 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be dead. My name is Mike, that is Gavin and Thea.
That's not the intro to this podcast. Things that used to be dead? Are we bringing stuff back to life?
Wait, is that what I said?
Yeah.
No, you know what?
We're keeping it.
We're keeping it. I think the podcast is over. The podcast is over. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 179 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. No, I did it again, didn't I?
No, you did it. You did it right. This is almost all staying in. Yes.
It's a podcast about things that used to be alive.
Correct.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 179. This is a podcast. That's Gavin and Fia. Gavin.
Yeah.
Are you watching the new Scrubs?
I have not. I don't like waiting for things to come out a week at a time, and I hate that I'm like that, but that's the way I am. And I'm already watching a couple shows that are like that, and so I'm waiting for all of this season to be out.
Okay, well, the good news is that all of this season is now out.
Oh, okay then. Well, that's our next show. Well,
it is,
the final episode of this season of The Pit comes out tonight at the time of recording, so maybe we'll start Scrubs next week.
All I will say is that I both recommend it. I think they did a good job. It definitely feels like there's something missing. I think I know like one or two of the elements that it might be, but it is still well done. I still liked what they did. Okay. It is worth watching as a Scrubs fan.
Okay, good. I'm sure we've talked about it a little bit throughout the history of the pod, but I'm a very big Scrubs fan. It is
we both are, yes.
One of my favorite shows of all time. Probably up there, like in the at least top 3.
Wow.
Yeah,
I need to watch it. I never watched it.
It's so good.
Okay.
Watch season 1, episode 4. If you like that, congratulations. If you don't like that, then you're not going to like the show and don't waste your time.
All right.
Is that My Old Lady?
Yes.
Yes. One of the best episodes of the show. Starting out the
first
for sure.
like really good episode of the show.
And this episode is not sponsored by Scrubs, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I
don't
know. I mean, podcast is almost over. Like,
send me money. I will send. Who's making that show? ABC. I will send ABC an invoice. Thank you very much.
There we go.
Anywho, this is a podcast. Today,
for now,
as we've alluded to a couple times so far, this is the as Mike put it last episode, the penultimate.
Yes.
Just a great word. Episode of the podcast. Next episode will be our last. And today we're talking about the Holocene Epoch. That is today. That is right now. The current section of geologic time. Next episode will just be kind of chit-chatting. I don't even think I'm going to really write up much of an outline for next episode. I think we're just going to kind of talk about what it's been like to do the pod. And all that stuff for the last... 5 years plus.
I had it in my notes
Mhm.
to ask you what next episode topic is, and I just put the end of an era with a cry face.
But yeah, so that'll be next episode in 2 weeks' time on our normal upload day of Wednesday, not Friday. So that'll be next time. But in the meantime, we have a really cool episode. I had an interesting time writing the outline for this episode. You'll see why toward the end. But in the meantime, before we get into that, I'll say we don't really need to do much of a housekeeping because following us on the social media things and suggesting things to us will not be of much use of anybody's time.
True.
Hasn't been much use of anyone's time so far.
But
Hey,
we will definitely have a link down below to Fia's webinar series if you want to keep listening to Fia in your ear holes. Definitely check out. It'll be
and your eye holes.
And your eye holes. That's true. First link in the description or in the show notes, of all this stuff. It's go ahead, give the spiel, Fia, the spiel.
Oh yeah, so it's just a webinar series where guests come to talk about the research about what's going on in Florida's nature's coast. It's mostly coastal ocean themed, but we do have other guests as well, and they're usually 30 to 40 minutes with Q&A session at the end. All the webinars are free and all are welcome.
Awesome. But yeah, there was just one that went up at the time this episode goes out 2 days ago. And so there's the whole backlog on the website as well. So they're really neat. You should check them out.
Wow, you're selling this more than I am. Thank you.
It's what I've been doing for 5 years.
Nice.
So with that, because we had Fia's little spiel at the beginning, we'll do Today in History first and then Seagrass Corner.
I mean, not a whole lot great today. I had to kind of search for this one, but I'm trying to think here, like how I can intro this without you guys immediately knowing what it is. What is the most groundbreaking year in the history of North America?
1492, probably.
So on today's date in 1492, Christopher Columbus signed a contract with the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella to find the Indies. It promises him 10% of all the riches found, and nothing bad happened after that.
I wonder if he actually got paid because he did not find that spot. So he technically didn't fulfill the contract.
He never knew that, though. He always believed that he landed in the right spot.
What an idiot.
Wow.
Oh, Christopher
famously, like, not just for all the genocide and awful treatment of natives, but like just famously a terrible person. Like the Spanish Inquisition was happening at the time, and even like the Queen doing the Spanish Inquisition at the time was like, Christopher Columbus is a lot.
I believe he got arrested like during one of his voyages back. Like even people at the time were like, I don't know about Chris.
Right, so it's not like he's not just a guy who's like not chill with the retrospect of 2026. He was a bad dude for the time. So do what you will with that information.
Great.
And with that information, I believe we've got some Seagrass Corner.
Yeah. So for Seagrass Corner today, I wanted to talk about the Atlantic horseshoe crab, or Limulus polyphemus. I wanted to talk about them because it's horseshoe crab mating season.
Horseshoe crabs are so cool.
They're so cool. The species that I'm talking about lives in the Gulf of Mexico and also along the Atlantic coast.
Whoa.
Shut up.
Whoa.
No.
Come on. No.
No. Not on this pod. Not on this pod. Anyways, they are highly prized for because their eggs were used by indigenous people, and they were eaten. And then they're also like a food source for sea turtles. And the horseshoe crabs are also used for fishing bait and for biomedicine. Particularly, you've probably heard about horseshoe crabs having blue blood, and that their blood is used in research and science.
Mm-hmm.
They play a cool role in the ecosystems by providing food for larger animals to eat. And so one thing that one of my advisors is doing in collaboration with Florida Wildlife and Fisheries, I think, is like they're doing the Florida Horseshoe Crab Watch, and that's where they get like citizen science programs, so where people just
Cool.
like anybody can report and tag these horseshoe crabs that show up on the beaches in places like Cedar Key, and they collect valuable information so that way we can understand how they're doing and if they're doing okay.
As we learned just a few episodes ago in episode 176, horseshoe crabs, not crabs.
True.
Not crabs. They're related to spiders.
Who do I complain to about the whole, like, oh, this thing that's obviously a thing isn't actually the thing?
Everyone.
The English language.
All right, I give you that one.
I mean, that's also... Every language kind of has stuff like that. Like, the literal translation for the French word for potato is apple of the earth. So, anyway.
I love that.
Ah, the French.
Anywho, this episode is about the Holocene Epoch. The title is Today and Tomorrow, because it is today, it is quite literally right now, as well as the foreseeable future. This is our last regular topic episode, as I mentioned at the top. This is the current slice of geologic time that started 11,700 years ago and continues, like I said, to right now, right this second when you're listening to this podcast, whenever that is. And the first thought...
Everything's going well, right?
Oh, totally well. Super well.
All right.
The first thought that I had, like when I first learned that 11,700 year ago number, was, that seems like too round of a number. And so, will it be 11,701 next year? And the answer to that is no. So the start of the Holocene Epoch is defined as 11,700 years before the year 2000. So really, it is 9,700 BC.
Interesting.
Yeah. Why 2000? I think it was a round number. There were proposals for other dates to kind of stick it to, but I think 2000 just seemed a nice round number to use. And I will say, doing the research for this part of this episode was so annoying, because even within the same source, they would bounce back and forth to using BC dates and years before present dates. So I had to keep doing math to figure out when we're talking about. So yeah.
Started... Right, why did they pick the numbers that they did? Why are we there?
So we'll get into that in a little more detail, but I probably don't need to say this after 178 episodes of this show, but as far as the Earth is concerned, this wasn't even yesterday. So, for example, we're going to have fun with math a couple times this episode. I turn 30 soon. If you take the entire 4.5 billion year history of Earth and compress it into the 30 years of my life, the Holocene Epoch started about 41 minutes ago.
Oh, that's not that much.
Yeah, 41 minutes out of 30 years.
I was asleep 41 minutes ago.
Yeah. Another way to do the math, because math is fun, if Earth's history was compressed down to just a single year, so not 30, a single year, with, the ball drop at midnight on New Year's Day being the formation of Earth, and then the following ball drop at midnight of New Year's being today, the Holocene started about 82 seconds before midnight. Not even a minute and a half out of a whole year. That's the length of time we're talking about, comparatively.
It's so little.
It's so small. And so normally when we talk about these different chunks of Earth's history, we go into what was the climate like, what was the world doing. We don't really need to do that as much here. By and large, the world's climate, where the continents are, more or less the sea levels, or where they are today. Because it is today.
Mm-hmm.
There were fluctuations in climate a bit that are important and worth discussing, especially in the timeline of various things about human civilization. So we'll break those down. As we talked about last episode, by the time the Holocene starts, Homo sapiens is the only human species left. There are no cavemen, there are no Neanderthals, just Homo sapiens at this point. So, the Holocene is broken down into basically 3 subdivisions based on some climate stuff that was happening. So, the oldest, the first one, called the Greenlandian, was from 11,700 years ago to 8,200 years ago. So the first 3,500 years or so. And this was a continued warming from the last bit of the Pleistocene that caused the glaciers to melt and recede to the north. That's like the start of the Holocene is, this current time stretch between expansions and contractions of the glaciers, right? So as we talked about, glaciers throughout the Pleistocene would grow, and then they'd shrink, and they'd grow, and they'd shrink. The Holocene is just this slice of time where the glaciers shrunk. And so the first bit of the Holocene is a continuation of things getting a bit warmer, that same trend that caused this in-between glaciers period. This is the time frame, as far as human civilization is concerned, when we domesticated basically most of our animals, except for dogs. Dogs were quite a ways before this. But this is when, all of our livestock, so cows, sheep, goats, pigs, bees even, all of those were in the Middle East and South Asia. Llamas, alpacas, and guinea pigs in South America. I didn't know we had domestic guinea pigs for that long. That was pretty cool. We also domesticated some plants around this interval, like rice in Asia, potatoes in South America, corn in Central America, and then wheat, barley, and flax in the Middle East. This is when the first, permanent human settlements really started, mostly in the Middle East, the whole Fertile Crescent region that you learn about in school.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a bit of light farming to enable having permanent settlements, but definitely not sophisticated agriculture. There were also a couple of remaining, large mammals hanging on from the Pleistocene that we don't have, today. For example, Megaloceros, which is the giant deer. You'll sometimes also see it called the Irish elk, which is, imagine a deer, but 1.5x, or a little bit bigger than a moose. And moose are really big. However big you think a moose is, they are bigger. Woolly mammoths were just barely still hanging on in Siberia at the start of the Holocene. And then they also lived on an island called Wrangel Island, which is up in the Arctic Circle north of Russia, up until all the way around 4,000 years ago. So, the pyramids of Giza are older than the youngest mammoth, which is always a fun fact I like telling people.
Stuff like that always kind of...
Yeah.
that always breaks my brain.
Yeah, for sure. So the middle chunk of the Holocene, which also has a fun name that I didn't look more into, it's called the North Grippian. That was from 8,200 years ago to 4,200 years ago, so the middle 4,000 years of the Holocene. This was notably cooler during this period because all of that ice that was melting toward the end of the Pleistocene and then the sort of previous chunk, basically, when ice melts, it doesn't melt into warm water. it melts into
Mhm.
cold water, right?
Right.
And then that cold water then goes into the oceans and kind of messes with ocean currents because those are largely driven by cold waters in the Arctic and Antarctic sinking down to the bottom of the ocean and driving currents that way. So if you're just adding a lot more cold water, that kind of messes with some ocean current stuff. But during this chunk is when human civilization, like, really starts happening. This is when we really started farming and being good at it on a large scale. There are pictographs, so basically drawings of plows, animal drawn plows as early as 5,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. A little bit later in India as well. Major civilizations popped up around the world, including Sumer, which is widely considered the earliest civilization in what today is now southern Iraq. The earliest texts ever found are also from Sumer at this time. Ancient Egypt, which was already about 1,000 years old when this subdivision ends, was during this time. The Indus Valley civilization in India and Pakistan are also just about as old. So, like, there were, like, kingdoms during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that there wasn't, like, a form of culture before this. Like, there were cave drawings and things like that, and, people living lives and I'm sure making songs and doing that kind of thing, just as humans have always kind of done. But these were the first civilizations to have what most people today would call culture. They had libraries. They had art for art's sake. They had government and formal laws in a way that we would recognize today.
Mm-hmm.
And other places around the world, weren't quite there yet, but they were still doing lots of interesting farming and other agricultural things. So, like, some groups of indigenous Australians were doing systematic burning of areas so that their preferred foods would grow better. So they weren't, like, sowing and plowing and planting seeds that way. They were just burning the forest. So they're like, well, after a fire comes through, the stuff I like to eat grows better, so I'm just going to burn the forest. But they did it, strategically in a way that didn't destroy everything. Some of them were also, some different cultures around Australia were also doing eel farming, which is cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because we just figured out how some groups of eels reproduce. Like, not that, like, within the last couple years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also doing the similar fire gardening sort of thing were some Native American, groups across the Southwest and the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. We're also doing this kind of, like I said, like fire gardening sort of thing. The final subdivision of the Holocene, called the Maghalayan, I think is how you say it, started 4,200 years ago and lasts through until today. It started with a very severe 200-year-long drought in most of the places that we've been talking about up to this point. Mostly in the Middle East, North Africa, India, Pakistan, and China. It was kind of all over the world, but that's where it was most severe. And this is kind of what made the Sahara and Gobi deserts, like, as big and massive as they are today.
Mm-hmm.
But this drought, more or less, is what collapsed the Old Kingdom of Egypt, the Akkadian Empire in the Fertile Crescent, and potentially started the collapse of that Indus Valley civilization in India and Pakistan. So following that drought is basically everything you've ever learned about in history class.
Mm-hmm.
The New Kingdom of Egypt, ancient Greece, the ancient Chinese dynasties, ancient Rome, all of the historical events discussed in books like the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, the Mayan, Aztec, and Incan empires in Central and South America, the Mali Empire in West Africa, the various societies of Native Americans and indigenous Australians, medieval Europe, the Renaissance, the Vikings, the Age of Exploration/Colonization, the Industrial Revolution, the World Wars, and so on and so forth, through until this exact second. You're listening to this podcast and every future second for the foreseeable future.
It's one of those things where, because I'm a history teacher, like, I don't I never know how surprising this is, but you were talking before about how, we are closer to this event than the Great Pyramids of Giza or whatever. For me, it's always surprising to hear that, like, recorded history only goes back like 10,000-ish years. Like, and even then, it's, that's barely, that barely counts. Like, it's way more compressed what we
Yeah.
consider to be history than I would think. It feels like it goes back for millions of years, but it's, a couple of thousand at best.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this next part is fully my opinion. I don't have like sources or things, just like as I was reading through things and just thinking about all the stuff we've done, particularly in this last chunk, but honestly throughout the whole Holocene. The amount the world has changed, like I said, especially in these last 4,200 years, is basically unprecedented in the entire history of Earth.
All right, so here's the thing. I decided I was going to disagree with you before you said that, so let me go ahead and disagree with you right now. So, the reason why you're wrong, and again, I was going to disagree with Gavin regardless of what he said right now. The biggest change in the history of Earth is
I didn't say the
obviously
biggest.
when... Wait, what'd you say?
I said is basically unprecedented, and we'll talk about why.
Okay.
We'll talk about why, because it's obviously when I first wrote that, I wrote and rewrote like this little snippet a couple times. My first pass at it was that it was like on the scale of like life coming onto land, or like the oxygenation of the oceans. And then the more I actually thought about that, I'm like, no, that's not true. It's just not.
All right, go ahead and tell me why, because
Sure.
because I don't know what I'm arguing against yet, but I just want you to know, regardless of what it is, I'm going to say you're wrong.
Okay, come back to that because there's probably going to be a good stretch here. So keep that keep that in your brain. So this last 4,200 year period, again, this is my opinion, I think is kind of on the scale of some of the largest ecological changes, such as one that we've talked about before called the Carboniferous rainforest collapse, where basically during the early part of the Carboniferous period, the entire world was covered in rainforest, and long story short, so that was the first time that like tall trees were really a thing. And the trees got a little too overzealous and absorbed too much carbon, dropped global temperatures because there was less CO2 in the atmosphere, and killed themselves off and started an ice age because they were too good at sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. And so what's weird about this current thing, though, is that like in terms of sheer percentage of species going extinct, we are not close at all to any of like the so-called big five mass extinctions. And that's not to say that like biodiversity is doing well right now, but it's not like 70% of all species bad at the moment.
What are we at?
I'm not sure. It's really hard to quantify an ongoing thing like while it's happening, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that said, in terms of just environmental change and disruption, we are probably closer to those times than we as humans do like to think, though. So we're, from a like paleontology perspective, are we close? No, not really. From a like modern ecologist standpoint, probably closer than like normies would like to think we are. So we're somewhere in that kind of weird gray zone. And there are three reasons why I think that. And not just the weird extinction-ness, but three reasons why I think this is such a weird time like in all of Earth's history. Number one, starting around 4,000 years ago, humans move more dirt per year than Earth does naturally.
All right, I'm going to argue with you right here.
Okay.
I got my first point I'm going to argue with. And now here's the thing. I was probably just going to bring this up anyways.
Sure.
But here's my arguing point. Wrong. Because there was that time when we had the whatever, some big rock comes on down, hits Earth. Whole lot of stuff got moved from the Earth out to form the moon.
Okay.
That's my point. We're moving a whole lot of stuff right there.
Yeah, that was like 4 billion years ago, man.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying, like, however much, like, today, or even say 4,000 years ago, however much dirt Earth moves on its own through erosion, through rivers, and stuff like that, humans just move more now.
Do we move as much as the moon?
Okay, that was a one-time thing.
Duly noted.
But yeah, so that was 4,000 years ago, and that was way before we had giant machines to move it for us. We basically just had plows and horses and oxen to do it back then, and that's when it tipped. Today, that has increased to humans moving over 10 times the amount of dirt that the Earth does on its own. This is not just like digging for farms, though. We do a lot of that for sure, especially historically. But a lot of it now, at least in the global north, is moving dirt to make it better for building structures. For example, there is a gas station being built right now across the road from my house. It's really annoying. To build it, they had to dig out a giant pile of dirt, like as big as my house. And then it also kind of reminded me, right after I graduated from grad school, my first job was working on a construction site that was building a giant solar farm in the Southern California desert. When that project started, it was basically completely unbroken ground. There was like a crappy dirt road, but other than that, it was just like, desert. The way that they generally prepare, like, unbroken ground construction sites is that they more or less just shave off a bunch of dirt until the whole area is more or less flat, like level. And then they pack down the dirt until it is as level as they can possibly make it. On this particular project, it was about 50 acres while I was there. And by the end, we were about 6 feet below the surface. Compared to where the surface was when the project started. Total, it's about 500,000 cubic yards of dirt.
That seems like a lot.
It's a whole lot.
Like, it's not quite the moon, but I'll give you that. It's a lot.
And that's just the part that I worked on, which was the substation and like some of the batteries. The entire rest of the project, that was the actual solar panels, was about 2,800 acres. For another roughly 27 million cubic yards of dirt.
Wow.
To put it another way, since a cubic yard is kind of abstract, picture a 5-gallon bucket. Like the standard plastic bucket that you'd buy, like paint in, or that you just buy like a hardware store or something.
Yeah. This
one project alone, over the course of about 3 years, moved over 1.1 billion 5-gallon buckets worth of dirt.
Wow.
And that was one project in one area. And we are doing this all over the world. And it also was in the desert, really without many trees or rivers or anything to really get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So now picture that on a global scale as we, as a world went about building housing developments, Walmarts, data centers, sports stadiums, amusement parks, etc. over the last, just 100 years alone. This is not only, just on a technical level, extremely impressive, but also changes the way the Earth records its history. So, as geologists, we learn to make interpretations based on, the sequences of sediments from bottom to top. Because, when one layer of sediment gets deposited, the next one gets deposited on top of that, and so on. So the oldest is at the bottom, and the youngest layer is at the top. The way we move sediments now basically makes doing that in the future kind of unreliable. For anywhere that there has been a significant human presence for the last few thousand years. because we just move it around so much that it's hard to tell, like, if this has been disturbed, that's kind of unreliable. You can't read it the same way you could otherwise. We're also really fond of moving dirt and rock from one place to another that's really far away. Normally, you can look at a type of rock in an area and that will tell you stuff about the soil, but that's not always the case now because we move stuff around so much. Like the crushed limestone that is like next to my driveway in my house is from quite far away. So it's like, if you find limestone pebbles in an area, that tells you nothing anymore.
Yeah.
Point number 2. Not only do we move our dirt and rocks around a whole lot, we also move our plants and animals around too. New species being naturally introduced to a new environment has happened as long as there have been species, right? That's not a new thing. And in fact, we use that to help define certain sections of Earth's history, such as the land mammal ages that I used a lot in my grad school research. These are like a different way to measure time, basically, that other than using the geologic timescale. However, the rate of invasive species today is, I feel much more confident in saying this than the previous thing. The rate of invasive species today is higher than it's ever been in Earth's history. And like, just think about here in the US alone. Almost all of our common food animals are native to Eurasia and Africa. The only major exception is turkey and also seafood, because it's just easier to catch it yourself. But yeah, the only like commonly eaten meat in the US that is from an animal that's from here is turkey.
Wow.
Chickens, cows, pig, all of that is from Eurasia.
Does that mean I have to give the Europeans credit for something?
Depends. Actually, I think chickens are from Africa, if I'm remembering right.
I just don't want to give Europe credit for anything.
I mean, it's like I said, it's Eurasia. You can lean more into the Asia side of it if you want.
I'm fine with that. That's fine.
But yeah, so that's almost all of our food animals. Almost all of our common food plants are also native to Eurasia and Africa, the main exceptions being corn, potatoes, and tomatoes. Basically everything else is from over there. And then there's all the stuff that we brought around the world for fun instead of food. Most of our common pets are native to Eurasia or Africa. Many of the more popular, like pet birds, are from South or Central America, but there are also some from Africa or Australia. And just a little digression on cats here for a minute. Just the damage that cats alone do as an invasive species is astronomical. It's still really bad in the US, but in other places, like especially on islands like New Zealand and Australia, cats have basically single-handedly driven dozens of species of birds, small mammals, and small reptiles extinct. In addition to putting a lot of pressure on the ones that are not yet extinct. Keep your cats inside, please.
Yes.
Then, there are the ones that we brought with us as we moved around the world. Then there are ones that people just thought would be fun after, like, the age of, like, traveling all around the world. Famously, there are things that just escape. There are herds of wild horses across the American West that are just feral horses that escaped. Feral pigs here in the U.S., like particularly in the South, cause a lot of environmental destruction. Also very famously, Pablo Escobar in the early 80s brought in some hippos to his compound in Colombia that then escaped because they are hippos. And now Colombia has an invasive hippo problem.
Oh my god.
Which is kind of like, if all the species have an invasive species of, like,
worst.
We have
but also it's funny.
Oh, it's very funny.
Monkeys
Hippos are terrifying.
Invasive monkeys?
Yeah, we have invasive monkeys in Florida.
Interesting. That doesn't surprise me, but I hadn't heard that.
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah.
Green iguanas, technically,
Yes.
I think are also invasive in Florida. And actually, fun fact about those hippos, just this week, the Colombian government announced a plan to kill 80 of the hippos, which is about 40% of the population. It started with 4, and there are now about 200.
Are they going to eat them?
I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. It was just on. There's a whole Wikipedia page about Pablo Escobar's hippos.
Wow.
And so yeah, it's not just the U.S. or Colombia, either. In my favorite, but also most stupid example of this is in the 80s and 90s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became quite popular. And in one of their early comic books, it said that they were red-eared sliders, which are native to like south central U.S. from like Texas through like Alabama and then up to like Missouri sort of area. Because of the popularity of the Ninja Turtles, people all over the world wanted a pet red-eared slider, and unfortunately people don't realize that keeping a pet turtle is actually really demanding and often really smelly. So, people would just let them go.
And that turtle will outlive you.
Probably not so much red-eared sliders. They live long, like 50 plus, but it's not like they're living to like the hundreds probably.
I don't know. You get one of those things as an adult, like that might outlive you if it's living 50 years.
Yeah, like if I were to get a turtle now, I'd have to make plans for it, probably.
Yep.
But so people would realize, hey, this is more of a commitment than I wanted, because they're also dirt cheap. Like, not so much now because a lot of countries have banned them. But you know, for a time you could buy them for like $10, $15. And people just let them go in their local stream or pond. And now they are one of the most invasive species in the whole world. And are pushing native turtles all over the world to extinction, particularly in Australia. They're in basically every country in Europe except for like the very northern ones like Finland and Sweden and stuff. Many countries in Asia. So just turtle species across the world in general are not having a great time because of the Ninja Turtles.
Thanks, Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then there are the ones that we introduced by accident, that we didn't even know were coming along for the ride, particularly in the Great Lakes here in the U.S. They are filled with invasive fish like goby and snakeheads and invasive bivalves like zebra mussels that all came to the Great Lakes via the ballast tanks of cargo ships. So the hull of cargo ships is basically like a big empty space that they fill or empty of water when they need the ship to go up or down in the water. When the ship is full of cargo, that makes it sink a little bit, so they pump water out, that helps them float a little better, but when they're more empty, they suck up water to make themselves sink so they don't like float too high and then tip over. So they have this giant tank that they use to like suck in or push out water. And I guess they just never thought about the stuff that gets sucked up with the water. Because they just started taking water from Asia and dumping it in the Great Lakes. And vice versa. And, I don't know as much about the fish, but the zebra mussels in the Great Lakes are present. Not just the Great Lakes, they're present in basically every waterway in the U.S., from New York to California, where they clog up infrastructure because they are so good at growing. Like, they're like weeds. They clog up, like water intakes for water treatment plants and hydroelectric dams. They cause whole dam, like, shutdowns because they clog up the water intake so much. Because nothing eats them. They basically outcompete all the native filter feeders anywhere they go. Now on to the plants, which is much shorter. Not because there are fewer of them, but because me and
don't
plants.
like them.
Because I don't like them. So nearly all of our common house plants are non-native, and often get out into the wild one way or another. For example, along the banks of the Susquehanna River here in central Pennsylvania, you can see large groves of bamboo. That's not supposed to be here. Tulips are a very pretty flower. I have some planted in front of my house. But they're native to the mountainous regions of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East and Western Asia. Not here. I also have a rubber tree in my office at work that's native to East Asia. Famously, kudzu is a vine native to Asia that was introduced to the southern U.S. On purpose for erosion control. So they would like plant it along streams and stuff to keep the streams from like eroding too much. But now has the nickname the vine that ate the South because it grows so out of control and so fast that it kills.
That's a great name.
It really is. But it just grows over top of everything else. Like whether it's a tree, whether it's another, like a bush or something, it just grows over top of it and smothers it like a blanket, basically. And we plant all sorts of stuff in the ground without really thinking about it. And what happens when it gets out, but invasive plants are an enormous biodiversity problem because obviously things eat plants. And if the native plants go away, the things that eat the native plants might not like or might not eat the new invasive plants. So then what happens? Everything dies. And so this amount of cross-continent exchange has really never happened this quickly before. Even back when Pangea broke up about 200-ish million years ago, that was the last time species could like freely move from any continent to any other with relative ease. It would take you a while because it's still continents, but at least they were all touching.
Right.
And there have been times when North America was connected off and on with Asia over the last 100 million years or so. But this current amount of cross-continent exchange is just completely unprecedented and will generally lead to like lower global biodiversity as all the same species will become dominant over large swaths of every continent, right? And so, in my opinion, this is the longest lasting impact that we will have on Earth. We have caused so many things to go extinct, and we are on track to continue to do so. And that will create like an evolutionary bottleneck, right? So it's fewer diversity, going forward. That said, because we've brought so many new things to new places, those species will eventually diversify into different species in the long term, right? Red-eared sliders in the U.S. are eventually going to become a different species than the red-eared sliders in Australia. Eventually. So biodiversity, strictly in terms of the number of species, will eventually recover from us. But diversity in terms of like the different varieties of life will not. If you want to learn a bit more about that, look up the difference between the biological difference, because there's social science differences between diversity and disparity. It's a fun thing I learned about in grad school.
That's cool.
Point 3 of our 3 points. We haven't even talked about, we've talked about all the dirt and stuff we moved, we've talked about all the animals and stuff we moved. This is a little bit of a continuation of the moving the dirt. This is moving the stuff below the dirt. All the stuff that we take out of the ground to then use for other stuff. Unless it is solely made of plants, or plant parts, or animal parts, it comes from the ground somehow. I'm just looking around at my desk here in my like home office, and other than I think like one, I happen to have like a pot holder in here for some reason, every single thing is either plastic, glass, or metal. And all of that comes from the ground.
Yeah.
These days, mostly metals and plastics. Like, just think about your car, right? If humans just vanished today without a trace, and some alien species came to Earth 1 million years in the future, they would unmistakably know that we were here. It wouldn't be because of our buildings, because those would for sure be long gone, in a million years. But because of the weirdness of what bringing all of this underground stuff up to the surface does, and especially how much we've concentrated it. Like, in a million years, all the plastic water bottles and Walmart bags and stuff, that will all be, like, broken down into all of its parts. So, you know, those future potential aliens wouldn't, like, find a water bottle, right? They would find all the chemical signs that those left behind. Basically just an enormous worldwide spike in hydrocarbons, because basically we take oil from the ground and turn it into plastic. I'm not a chemist, so I don't know exactly what types of hydrocarbons those would leave behind, but it would be like an incredible anomaly in the rock record. They'd also see a similar spike in iron as well for similar reasons. They would see the enormous disturbance in the sediment from all the stuff we dug up that we talked about earlier. But the longest lasting sign of this type would be from all of our nuclear shenanigans.
Oh, is that going to stick around?
Oh boy. Oh, Mike. We talked about isotopes in the most recent Fia Takes the Wheel episode, episode 175. But as a short recap, every element has isotopes. It's basically just different numbers of neutrons in the central nucleus of the atom. For example, carbon always has 6 protons in the nucleus. That's what makes it carbon. But it can have 6, 7, or 8 neutrons in the nucleus as well. Most carbon atoms have 6 neutrons, so it's balanced, 6 and 6. And we add the number of neutrons to the number of protons together and we talk about it. So the most common carbon is carbon 12. When it has 7 neutrons, that's carbon 13. Both carbon 12 and 13 are stable, meaning that they don't spontaneously throw off parts of themselves to become stable, often becoming a different element entirely. That's what radioactivity is. Carbon 14 is radioactive. It gives off a part of a neutron, which turns that neutron into a proton, and turns the carbon 14 into nitrogen 14, which is stable.
Whoa.
So that's an isotope primer. We measure how long it takes for radioactive stuff to transform from the radioactive thing to the stable thing using a term called a half-life. Basically, if you have 1 pound of carbon 14, how long does it take for half of that pound to turn into nitrogen 14? For carbon 14, it's about 5,700 years. Pretty short, all things considered. Carbon 14, all the stuff we're doing with it today, would not last those million years, that 1 million years for those future potential aliens to pick up on, because the half-life is too short. Fortunately for those aliens, though, we also like to play around with uranium.
Playing around is a funny way to put that.
We, maybe not as much these days, but oh boy, in the 50s and 60s, we loved uranium. Couldn't get enough of it. So, uranium, unlike carbon, has no stable isotopes. Every form of uranium, at least that is naturally occurring, I don't know about stuff that we've made in labs, is radioactive. We've done a really, really good job over particularly the last 80 years or so, of finding uranium in the ground, taking it out, concentrating it, and then using it to make bombs, and occasionally boil some water. Uranium-238, which is by far the most common isotope, has a half-life of about 4.5 billion years. If you had 1 pound of uranium-238 on the first day that there was solid ground to stand on Earth, you'd have half a pound of it today. With the other half being some combination of the elements thorium and lead. And so, this is our longest lasting chemical signal that we were here. Just generally high radiation across the world as we would extract uranium, as well as lots of other radioactive elements. We use them in not just for bombs and boiling water, but medical stuff uses radiation all the time. It's not just uranium used in power plants. Thorium has become more common. And so the general level of radioactive materials at the surface of the Earth has just increased exponentially over the last 80 years or so. And that will last a very, very long time. And so at this point, dear listeners, and Mike and Fia, you might be thinking, well, if the world is so different now than it was just a few thousand years ago, shouldn't it be called something else? Don't we normally change or start a new time slice when things change a lot? Normally.
Can I take a guess here?
Sure.
Or am I going to step on you?
No, go ahead.
Is this where some people want there to be a new epoch called the Anthropocene?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So many scientists also had that thought. And there have been recent-ish efforts to establish a new epoch called the Anthropocene. Depending on exactly how you consider when people actually started, pushing for this to be a new slice of time. I think the term was first used sometime in the 80s and then became more formalized in the mid to late 90s. But as of 2016, I think, was when the various committees that decide the different slices of geologic time formally started considering it. Maybe I have that date a little wrong. I don't have it in my notes. But sometime in late 2010s through early 2010s is when the actual relevant committees that would decide this started discussing it seriously. And so for anybody who's not familiar, the prefix anthropo means human. This was basically an effort to put into the geologic timescale how much humans impact the world. And I say was in the past tense there, because in 2024, after getting through several rounds of reviews by the various international committees and subcommittees that all work together to make the timescale, the proposal for the Anthropocene was voted down by a pretty wide margin. It was not close.
And why is that?
There are a number of reasons for it. A lot of them are very complicated and technical. The main one that I saw was mostly because the subcommittee working on it chose a start date without really a robust enough support to justify it. And I think they were basically told by because it was a subcommittee, right? By the larger committee that subcommittee was under was okay, you've been working on this for a decade now. You gotta put forward a proposal. And so that's what they chose. I believe they chose sometime in the 50s. Which is the start of if you look at global population growth after World War II, it just jumps up like a rocket. So there's that. There's also all the nuclear stuff. So that's kind of why they chose the 50s. But the broader geologic community disagreed.
Do you agree with them?
I don't know. I don't have enough. I haven't looked closely enough at their actual proposal to know if the reasons they gave were good. Do I think one could be proposed that I would agree with? Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the general sense, was there is a proposal that could work. It's not this one.
Mm-hmm. Is it something where we need a better proposal, or is it something where we need to allow more time to pass?
Probably both, but probably more of the second one.
Okay.
Because if we do go based off of the sometime in the 1950s, it hasn't even been 80 years yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's real recent to try to quantify what we have done in that time. And so to kind of end us off here, this is how the rejection letter ended. So this is like the closing statement for the letter rejecting that proposal.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so this was the rejection letter from the International Union of Geological Sciences. Quote, despite its rejection as a formal unit of the geologic timescale, Anthropocene will nevertheless continue to be used not only by earth and environmental sciences, but also by social sciences, politicians, and economists, as well as by the public at large. It will remain an invaluable descriptor of human impact on the Earth system.
But
So, this phrase is not going anywhere. In fact, one of the faculty in my department teaches a joint class. I think they're called foundation seminars at Bucknell. But basically, it's like an interdepartmental course called the Anthropocene, where the point of the course is to talk about all of the stuff that humans are getting up to regarding like the Earth and how that impacts the Earth, but also how it impacts other people. That's kind of the whole point of that course. And, you know, despite this rejection happening 2 years ago, we still teach the course with that name. So, like, people are still going to talk about it. I think it's an interesting way. It's kind of like how people have co-opted the word dinosaur to mean things that it doesn't. So we have changed the world so much in these last, 4,200 years in particular.
Right.
That, looking through all of it, it is humbling. But at the same time, thinking about the broader history of Earth is even more humbling. So, like I kind of said at the beginning, writing the outline for this episode just made me feel weird and conflicted.
yeah.
For a lot of reasons, I imagine.
Yeah. So, that's the Holocene Epoch. If and when it changes, I'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll record a special episode.
Yeah, right? In 2030, if and when the Anthropocene gets approved, we'll let you know.
We'll be the first ones to tell you.
Hank and John Green also wrote a book. I believe John was the main author, but I think they also
Yeah.
It was just
had
John.
a podcast
Yeah.
called Anthropocene Reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
which was very good. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
I recommend you
I
tell
think
everything that
it
the
threw
Green
me
brothers
off
do.
for a while that you were calling it Anthropocene because they call it Anthropocene. And I didn't understand.
I'm still having a hard time with that one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's just like the first way you heard it pronounced is the one that sounds correct to you.
Is there one that is correct, or is it one of those things where it doesn't actually matter?
I don't see an official pronunciation of it on its Wikipedia page, so no.
So we can say whatever we want in that case.
Yes. I will say,
All right.
Anthropocene does sound more sciencey, I think.
That makes me hate it then. If it's more sciencey. Like
Potato,
I want to
potato,
go with more.
potato, potato.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. There is a correct way to pronounce that word,
Well,
and
then
it's
I hate
potato.
it.
Anyway, we only have so many more words left to pronounce. This has been episode 179 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. I said it right that time, didn't I?
Yes.
My name is Mike. That is Gavin and Fia. We've got one episode left. We hope you guys stick around for that coming up in a couple of weeks. But until then, take care, everybody.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.